I appreciate it. My name is Adriana Laura. I am the sales associate here at Graphical Networks. Joining me also is Jason Sherman, who is the director of customer support and our engineer extraordinaire, as I like to call him.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So today we're going to be talking about tackling cabling spaghetti and boost data center efficiency. That is the topic for today. We have 30 minutes, so thank you for your time. We'll just do a quick overview of what we're going to be focusing on today and what netTerrain is, and then Jason will do a live demo for you as well. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat below. Should be at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to your questions towards the end of the webinar.
Yeah, I think there's a Q&A section. You can put them in there, or you can put them in
Yep.
chat. We'll see them pop up wherever they come, so that's fine.
That works. So let's get started. If you have challenges with cabling spaghetti or efficiency headaches, netTerrain can help. What exactly is netTerrain? Well, it is a user-friendly IT visualization and documentation software you can access from any web browser. It is collaborative, so you can see who is working on what diagram from your team. You can also create work orders, and it has a catalog with thousands of pre-built devices. So you can find virtually any device you need to in seconds, and you can add it to your diagrams. It is also used to manage data centers, networks, and fiber plants, all in one tool.
That's right. I think we have some polling questions. Are those? Should I start one of those now, or does that come later?
Oh, sorry. Yep, those will come later.
Sorry.
I didn't mention those. I
Okay,
apologize.
no problem.
We are going
that's
to do
okay.
those
I
today.
wasn't sure. Yeah, go ahead.
That's my fault. All right, so we talked a little bit about what netTerrain is, and in a nutshell, netTerrain basically simplifies IT problem solving. It makes it easy to pinpoint outages, manage rack capacity, decommission cabling equipment, as well as cut power costs up to 30%. You can also get capacity reports in seconds, oversubscribe racks based on actual power consumption, and stay on top of server health, and integrate with any third-party app in clicks. So who uses netTerrain? We have organizations of all sizes across all industries. It is used by one-person IT teams and by some of the largest companies in the world as well. And you can see here's kind of a list of some of our current customers. We work with government agencies, manufacturing companies, healthcare, as well as a lot of colleges and universities. All right, so we'll move on to the polling questions. I think we got a fun one for you today.
So I just launched it.
Awesome.
So biggest headaches you're currently facing. There's some spaghetti cabling. I guess that's cabling that's sort of a mess. Planning for capacity, rising costs, and other. I guess whatever other is. I guess everything but those three. I think you choose probably, yeah, it's multiple choice. So choose a couple of those if you want. And let's see, we've got a tie for cabling and capacity.
It's a tie.
Rising costs. Third place. Other is 0%. We'll give you a couple more seconds. A little bit longer. Still pretty much tied cabling and planning. So capacity, so that's good. And that's that. All right. Let me end that poll. Thank you very much. And yeah.
You want to share the results, Jason?
Yeah, I could share results. There you go. I'll close that. I think you can move on. We got another poll question, actually. I think we had a second.
One more.
Yeah. So I guess I'll stop the share of that. Close that. I think there was, right? Oh, here we go. What do you manage? What do you manage? Fiber plant networks or data centers? So I guess you have three. I think we had an extra letter in there. Looks like everybody manages everything. Fiber plant networks, I guess, is just, private overview. Data centers and fiber plant. All right, I'll end that just in the interest of time. You guys can check that out. And then there was one more very important question. I think if I can get this one to launch. Oh no, it doesn't want to launch.
You might need to stop the share.
Oh yeah, maybe. All right, no, they're both. Oh, stop sharing. All right, you're right. Let's see if I can launch this one. Nope. I guess that was
Okay.
it. We'll skip the other one. Doesn't work. That's fine. We'll get to netTerrain in action now. So
That's right.
let me share my screen. I'm going to stop Adrian on the share. Jump over to here. Share. So netTerrain, if you haven't seen it or really know much about it, it is a web-based platform tool. So we do offer the ability to install it yourself in your environment. We also offer cloud solutions as well. So we'll host it for you, or you can host it yourself. But it is Windows, you need a Windows server, and SQL database is the backend database. So that's a requirement as well. There's no alternatives for those things. It's not hard to install and get up and running, really. It doesn't take a lot of horsepower, especially if your footprint you're looking for is not super large with, users and things like that. So as was mentioned, it is web-based for the most part. You're using a web browser to do the work. And we do have other tools. We have this thing called the ITK. We have this collector tool as well that can pull data from external data sources if there's a collector connector, we'll call it connector associated with it. But this is just an example project, demo project. At the top, you'll see a URL. It says demo, HTTPS demo, blah, blah, blah. I can throw that in the chat if you guys want to click on that at some point. You don't have to get in there now, but you should be able to get in there as a read-only user if you do want to kind of poke around a bit. But I'll walk through this a little bit and kind of give you some direction if you do want to poke around. Again, this is just an example project. Normally you start from netTerrain, white piece of paper at the top level. There's nothing in here, and then you got to go through the process of adding things. What can you add? Well, in the case of if you want to do some network documentation and cabling, that kind of thing, on the right, you might, grab a building object if you're going to document something in a building or a data center. You double click and create a hierarchy and then start to add things like floors if you want to. You don't have to. Or you can go straight to doing things like, just add a cabinet kind of thing and double click and go in and start to add devices to that as well. It's just drag and drop. This was mentioned by Adriana. There's a lot of devices and objects in our catalog that you can grab from. If something were missing in your customer devices or things, will create for you, request those things, but you can create things yourself as well. The tool allows you to manage your catalog fully, including, adding new objects, editing objects, adding data fields, and so on. So if you are getting into, capacity planning and cabling and that kind of thing, you can certainly, again, these hierarchy, this sort of levels that I'm showing you are really kind of up to you, but this is, again, showing you an example of if you happen to have multiple locations and you want to show, if you are doing fiber, especially outside, fiber showing connectivity between locations or buildings, you might have a map like this, which is a dynamic map that's part of the outside plant, part of netTerrain, DCIM, or Logical. So you can certainly add do a hierarchy like this where you have, different locations, you drill into the location, show things like, a picture or something, and something like a wiring closet, cabling, and so on. But this particular project is, it's kind of large because you do have these different locations. Most things all sort of run back to the turtle here, where I can drill down. And this particular project is a, this part of the project is a campus where you have different buildings that are on the map that are laid out, that allows you to, zoom in and see different parts of the project. Again, this one has things like, cables, conduits, and so on to represent, where the things are, your fiber cables basically running, in this case. So you can certainly show those things if you want to. So conduit, and you can see what's inside the conduit as far as the number of cables that are associated, like fiber cables, for instance. So if you are trying to manage, fiber cabling or cables in general, obviously, if you're using something like Excel, it can, it's fine in the beginning, but it can get a little bit cumbersome, harder to share, like an Excel file. I guess through SharePoint, you could do it to a certain extent, but over time that can get a bit big and unwieldy because typically, cabling, you want it to terminate somewhere. For us, cabling, you're typically going to terminate to the device that the cable actually terminates to. So if you have a fiber cable, they might have it terminating to something like a splice case, right? Or it may be going to connecting to a patch panel, let's say, that's in a building, cabinet sort of thing. So again, this is, again, showing sort of examples of hierarchy and, from starting at a high level and working your way down to more detail. Again, flexible tools. So you choose sort of the hierarchy you want, if any. You don't have to necessarily show all these sort of different levels, right? But if you do and are managing cabling, you might have different sort of things that you're looking for with cabling. It might be things like conduit, and then what's inside the conduit. It might be more something like, well, I want to show floor plans and cabling back to the wiring closet and where those cables run, perhaps, and how they're all how these things are all connected back to something like the wiring closet. And then you might also show wiring trays and where they are technically in the ceiling and which cables are in the wiring trays. And also you may have capacity because your wiring trays can only hold so many cables. Maybe that's important. Now that's a level of detail that most folks don't necessarily get into or care about or need. What's probably more common, outside of getting down to like room level wall jacks, which you can do, is more wiring closets, data centers, cabinets, and documenting those and understanding what you have. And again, sort of talking about capacity. So this particular diagram is my third floor of the building. You see a floor plan in the background. That's something you would import or upload as a JPEG or PNG, sort of just your normal file format types that you're using. So you basically embed that as the background image. And then, you look at this and you can see, things like generators and UPSs and power. So I'm doing some power connectivity here. And then I've got my different cabinets. I've got a few other things on the floor plan as well. Fire extinguishers and some cameras and that sort of thing. At the top, you can see the different colors, rack overrides. Basically, the colors are percent utilization of something, and I'll talk about the of something in a second. And then you've got counters, how many devices are in total in this diagram and down below, and things like that. You've got this thing called rack finder, continuous rack, and these are just some reports that you can run that I just happen to run here that just show me continuous rack units for all my cabinets. In a certain, obviously, cabinets, it's great to know how many rack units are available, but it's really nice to know how many are continuous rack units, because obviously if you need to go find 10 rack units, in a cabinet, it might be much more limited than what something might be telling you as far as, oh, you've got 10 rack units of space. But if it's not continuous, obviously that's not very helpful. So you can get sort of reports and data like that out of the system. But back to sort of the coloring here, these are the cabinets. These are how we represent cabinets, kind of looking down over top of the cabinet, not so much the front view of the cabinet that you get when you sort of drill down into the cabinet itself. But if I single click on a cabinet on the left-hand side, you'll see some details about the cabinet. Turn my little annotator on, spotlight tool. So on the left, it tells you available rack units. So obviously this is full. And there's some other information here. But if I click off the cabinet and just kind of click in the space of the diagram, on the left-hand side, you'll see things like settings and properties. But specifically, the settings for this diagram, you'll see it says, rack utilization, power, and weight, which I can change. I can say, oh, show me this diagram by power or by weight, as the case may be. It shows all of them pretty much overweight. But if I go back to RUs, rack utilization, see it that way. And where is it getting this information to sort of do the math? Well, it's what's rack mounted in the equipment, right? So in this cabinet, there's equipment, and that equipment, of course, has a certain size, rack units consumed, power, if there's a power associated with the object, passive device. And then, of course, the device can have weight. And those are things, usually manufacturer spec, but you can override that. So if you know that this device on the left-hand side, you're like, oh no, I know it's 110 pounds, and I know it consumes more power, you can come in here and update that. Or, if you're getting more of a real-time power feed from the device where you're monitoring the device via SNMP, you might be getting an actual power number, and you bring that back and put that in that field. Or you use what we call EM to sort of report on that as well. So, but you can see, this equipment as you rack mount equipment, which is basically drag and drop into the cabinet front or back position, or you might have containers for the sides where you might have PDUs kind of thing. So it just starts to calculate the things that you put inside of it. It knows, if there's a power number or if there's weight, roll that up and then report on that information. So it makes it so you can start to see visually, rack utilization, capacity. But of course, you can use that data to also run reports like continuous rack finder. And there's some other reports I'll show in a minute as well. So if there's questions, you guys feel free to post those. So I'll just drill down. Now, as far as cabling, cable management, you again decide what that means for you and your environment and what's important. As I mentioned, most folks don't go to the wall jack. Some people do because they have a requirement for that. Usually security type things. They need to know every wall jack, every port, which ones are used, where they are, and so on. But not everybody gets into that level of detail. Most folks are more like they want to show patch panels and how they terminate out to other patch panels or out of the building, or how they terminate down to a switch, primary, or switches and that kind of thing. So you do that because these devices are modeled, they are created with these predefined ports that you can connect to. These are all things you can rename and renumber. So if you prefer a different label on them, you can certainly do that. These are connections. That's why you see these lines here. These are connections to another port. In this case, another port to some other device. And that's visually, when you look at netTerrain, when you first bring a device in, it looks like more or less like this, depending on how it's modeled. This one was modeled where you actually have a slot here and there's a bunch of ports and stuff. I've added a card here to where there's a slot, and then I've created connections to some of these ports. And that's why you see them when I turn on this, we'll call it inner diagram connection. That's why you see this yellow triangle too. It's basically just saying, hey, I don't live in this diagram. I actually live in a different diagram, but I'm going to show up here just to let you know that you have a connection to me. But I live over here. And if I double click, it'll take you to the over here part, which in this case is here. And that's what it's connected to. So it's a patch panel card where it's got front and back ports, just showing you, like a cross connect in between. So, how does this help you? What is this going to do for you? I guess from the standpoint fixing things or helping you troubleshoot. I'll show you that in just a second. Let's see.
Hey, Jason too. Sorry, this is Fred at Graphical Networks. Is there a way you can just show them from scratch how you can start building these diagrams?
Yeah, sure.
I think that would help.
Yeah, no problem. So you have these connections between equipment, and what it allows you to do is ultimately generate a physical path diagram that shows you the end-to-end connection, right? I start here and I end here, and this is the hops it takes in between. This is what we call CLR, swim lane. Basically, it's a hierarchy versus physical path. So you got your building, your floor, your wiring closet, your rack, your device, your port, and that connects to another port, cable, and then so on. So back to what Fred was saying, which is, how do you get data into the system? If you were going to manually start to kind of create this stuff, what would you do? Well, you would start usually at a top level. You create maybe a site object, for instance. If I come over here on the right, I can grab, site object, drag it in, name it. I'll call this webinar one. See, you got some text, you can rotate, do things, but double click. If you use an outside plant where you have the dynamic maps, you can come up here and actually add a map, insert a map. See, I'm only doing that. That's basically where I am. It's in the sort of Silver Spring area. And then over there, you can start to add things. You want to add a building or something, you just drag it in and plop it where the building goes. There's different building object types. There's some that are see-through, which I use a lot of. The building is basically label your buildings B1, B2, or whatever the actual names are. It's always helpful, right? So again, drag and drop in this case. Now, most folks are like, well, that could be a lot of work. Well, if you have data, you can import that automatically. You can make this more automated by using our integrations we have with different systems, Excel import, and so on. So you can certainly do those types of things. You can grab a conduit and drag that in if I want to do outside plant stuff. If you're strictly data center, you just go into your building. You can add floors if you want to add floors. You can certainly drag and drop a floor, name it, double click, add a floor plan, background image, cabinets, go grab a cabinet, drag that in, and start to populate it with equipment. So for instance, device, I'll just add a patch panel to this guy here. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to copy plus, control V. And I know I'm doing this kind of quick. That's just in the interest of time. But, if I had these two guys here, I could right click and do connections, insert, and then select these two patch panels and create a connection between them. If these were fiber panels, then I could put a fiber cable between them, and then I can go in and actually connect all the strands up through the interface. I can say, B1, pressing very well, and then just connect them all up, close that. Now I have a connection between the two, all the way down to the strand level, which is these circles. If I double click, it'll take me to the other patch panel. If I double click the link, it'll actually draw the ceiling. So, when you want to build out a project, for our tool, a lot of it's drag and drop. However, again, you can do Excel import. So you could populate a spreadsheet. You can use lat and long. So if you are positioning a lot of like manholes and stuff, you can do that with Excel. If you have something like ServiceNow or SolarWinds, we have integrations with those. If you want to do something like SNMP discovery, we have a tool that'll allow you to do that discovery. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the chat window, so give me a second. Fred, I think, has been answering you guys, so that's good. Yeah, software training, so it looks like everybody can see that, so that's good. But yeah.
Jason, there's a question about the pricing. How do we price netTerrain?
Yeah, so we're basically kind of two ways with price. objects and then users. If you are hosting it yourself, we give you unlimited read-only users, but then we charge you basically for the number of editor type users that you're going to have. Editors are people that can modify the diagrams, delete, add, change, and those are editors, admins, power users. So you have to think in terms of number of editors if it's on-prem, and also what we call objects. An object for us basically like buildings, floor is an object, the cabinet's an object, the device is an object. So you count those things. Now, with that said, something that has subcomponents is still one object. So even though this has 12 cards, slots for cards, doesn't matter. It's one object still. So if you know, a lot of folks have large chassis where they have cards and stuff. That's something we don't worry about as far as licensing goes. Links, we don't charge for links, so we don't care about the number of cables you're using, fiber cables and strands and all that. Doesn't matter. We don't put that as part of it. Calculate. So you think in terms of, you know, what it is you want to document. I need to document 20 cabinets. It's probably an average of 20 devices per cabinet. That's 400 objects. You know, you want to show a floor in a building. There's 2 more objects in the site. There's a third. You know, probably 500 object count you'd be good with in that sort of scenario. You can always add license counts later, add more to it, start off small, kind of build up, you know, make sure it's the right tool and all that good stuff. If you guys want a larger demo, you know, just email Fred, go to our website and sign up. We're happy to do a bigger demo, talk to you about obviously what you're trying to do. Try out the software at netTerrain.us. If you want to just sign up and kick the tires, drag and drop, do a few things. Networkdocumentation.com. That's a place you can go to see all our documentation, all our guides, or read through our user guides and stuff. It's pretty well documented. A lot of user guides, and a lot of things to read. There's a lot of features and functionality I'm not into. This is the base of what you'd be doing. So, see if there's any other questions.
I also went ahead and threw in the trial link in the chat. If anybody is interested, it's a 14-day free trial.
Yeah. And if you get stuck or you got questions on the start, we'll set up a time with you and we'll get you started and try and help you, you know, at least for 30 minutes or an hour, and you know, press some buttons and get an idea what to do. Hopefully this is helpful, kind of give you an idea what the software does. It can really help you organize, obviously, your network, show you, sort of reflect your as-built environment, I think, and then give you reporting and other details about that environment. So you can start to understand capacity availability, not only for like cabinets, but also things like, you know, power and weight, but also even cabling, rack utilization or cable utilization, fiber cables, fiber strands, that kind of thing. But by no means is it, there's always some work involved. So it's just a matter of planning exactly what you need to document to make it, you know, to satisfy whatever issue you might have. Get started. So automate as best you can. So anyway, that's it for our time. Really appreciate your time. Again, reach out if you have questions. So I'm happy to again help you guys out.
Yep. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. We really appreciate it. Myself or Fred will reach out to follow up with you all, see if you have any questions.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.